I got you with that title, didn't I? Guess that makes you the April Fool, am I right? This video was supposed to come out in April. It's now, what, summer? I guess that makes me the April Fool. I bet you weren't expecting this one, were you? Come on, maybe I found some comfort in talking Call of Duty on this channel, but I'm not forgetting the franchise that made me start it in the first place. While I was never as into it growing up, and even now as I am with Call of Duty, don't get the wrong idea, I still love me some Halo. From when I first played it all the way back when Reach came out, to when I decided to revisit Infinite several months ago. And on that note too, I really didn't properly thank you guys for the support that video got several months ago, so yeah, thanks for the support on that Halo video I made several months ago, revisiting Infinite. But just like Call of Duty, Halo is another franchise where I wanted to cover absolutely everything. Main series games, spin-offs. Holy shit, look at that! It's the greatest game ever made in the back there. And the Halo 3. Maybe possibly expanded media, since Halo's got a lot of that. Okay, in some cases maybe not, or at least I won't like covering it on the TV show. So between Call of Duty and this, I did initially plan on eventually doing another retrospective series on Halo, but honestly, after doing 5 Call of Duty games back to back, and with Splatoon really being the only palate cleanser I've had since I've made those videos, I kinda needed another palate cleanser. I decided, hey, let's just start with the Halo series now for the channel. Now obviously there's a lot less games to cover for the series, and my hope and goal is to cover the main 8 games by the end of the year. Now whether or not I achieve that, I suppose we're just gonna have to wait and see. But just because there's less games to cover, don't think it means I'm going to sell them short when it comes to these reviews. There's still a lot to talk about with these games, single player and multiplayer, both of which are still played and talked about to this day. Especially too in the original trilogy's case. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Call of Duty 4 was a bit intimidating making a video about that since it's so beloved, but like, where do I even start when it comes to Halo? Like, do I really need to go into what a phenomenon this was in the 2000s? For the purposes of today's video, I'm just gonna assume, yes, obviously, and I'm sure a wide variety of people have their own attachment to all these games in some way, but the original trilogy of this series is something different. It really was one of those lightning in a bottle moments in pop culture, a generational equivalent to something like Star Wars. Even beyond its critical and commercial accolades, it's a series that is insanely beloved by so many people. And obviously, that starts with the first game in the series. Just dropping all my shit here. Let's talk Halo. Man, I don't even know where I should start when it comes to talking about the development of this game. There was so much going on behind the scenes that frankly could take up an entire video in of itself. Now when it comes to my video, I'm just gonna go through the SparkNotes version of CE's development. So, you guys ever play or heard of Marathon? It was a PC shooter that released in the 90s that gained a strong cult following and was probably the first major success from developer Bungie, founded by Alex Seropian and Jason Jones. A relatively small team of about 15 employees, the staff began working on a side project while they worked on RTS games Myth and Myth 2. The idea was essentially to make a sci-fi version of what they did with Myth, and went through a handful of codenames. Armor was one, Blam was one of the more popular, Monkey Nuts was one. Imagine the game coming out like that. Development casually continued before the game got overhauled into a third-person shooter instead in roughly 1998. Eventually, Jones and writer Joseph Staten managed to get an audience in front of Steve Jobs to showcase the game, and Jobs was impressed. So impressed, in fact, that he made the decision to show the game at Macworld 1999. A decision that definitely had no relation to the game not even having an official name literal days before its reveal, and the game having a fatal bug that could have made it crash at any point during its said reveal. The game went through a whole slew of different kinds of names before it eventually settled on Halo to give the game a sense of mystery. What wasn't a mystery was the work at Bungie. Things were not going great there. Their last game, Myth 2, had a game-breaking bug that literally wiped the game off of computers, forcing them to recall the game, on top of losing money during development. In 2000, things simultaneously got better and worse as Microsoft announced they were purchasing Bungie and turning Halo into a launch title for their fancy new console, the Xbox. Now, not only were there more developments happening at the very last minute, but now Bungie had to make the game for a brand new console that no one had ever developed on before, and put all their cards on a console that was attempting to compete with Sony and Nintendo. Combat Evolved was rushed a lot, crunch was super common. And by the end of its cycle, 40 people in total have worked on Halo. Story details had to be completely reworked, entire ideas such as an open world campaign were scrapped, whole levels got entirely obliterated, multiplayer was completely reset literal months before the game released because it wasn't fun. Yeah, Bungie pretty much went through hell on earth when it came to developing this game. It must have been the biggest mix of joy and relief when the game finally came out to acclaim. Like, it seems like it was worth in the end, but damn, at what cost? Now, like I said earlier, obviously Halo Reach was where I started back in 2010, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because I'll talk about that when I eventually talk about that game, but it made me a huge fan of Halo growing up. With what limited knowledge I had of the series, I still fell in love with it. The worlds, the lore, the characters, the backstory, the gameplay. So much of what makes Halo magical for so many clicked with me back then. I got pretty into learning up all I could from expanded media. One of my first big book reports I did in middle school was on Halo: The Fall of Reach, a book I unfortunately no longer own. And again, while I wouldn't call myself a hardcore fan of the series or anything, it was still a series I had a lot of respect and appreciation for, even in the years I didn't own an Xbox beyond the 360. Although it doesn't seem like I missed much. Okay, I gotta slow down, we're not at 5 yet. I played a ton of Reach when I was younger, and I dabbled a little bit in Halo 4 right when it launched. I didn't play the original trilogy until 3 years ago. Yeah, I know, some fan I am, right? I honestly couldn't tell you why it took me so long to play these games, especially when I owned a version of Combat Evolved when I was younger, but for whatever reason, playing the original trilogy was just something that kept passing under my radar for years and years. Admittedly, part of that had to do with me not getting an Xbox One, but as I got older, my focus was towards PlayStation and, the Wii U. That having been said, when I finally managed to snag an Xbox Series X in 2021, you bet your ass Halo was the first thing on my mind. In the last few weeks leading up to graduating college, and especially the month afterwards, my mind was on nothing but Halo. I was gonna binge everything, finally experience the games I missed out on, relive the ones I played as a kid, all while prepping for Infinite's release that year. And it was mostly awesome. Which I say mostly because, these two games are also in the mix. And also this game! Okay, I have a confession to make. I don't love Halo Combat Evolved. It's not an awful game, but one that leaves a lot to be desired in my eyes. Let's start with the story. So, let me preface with a few things here before I get into the plot synopsis and the game as a whole. 1. Do not play Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. I repeat, do not play Combat Evolved Anniversary. I'll say it one more time. Do not play Anniversary. This version is infamous, and it's infamous for good reason. The updated graphics are way too over-detailed, multiple levels got a complete overhaul that they look and feel nothing like the original game. 343 Guilty Spark. Art direction is often inconsistent since some assets are just pulled directly from different games. Halo 3 Cortana being a glaring example. And while it's impressive that the games can switch between graphical styles with the press of a button, this also causes problems with remaster because it's playing the original game with its original geometry, meaning there can and will be times where you're shooting invisible walls in remastered, only to find out the original game has something in the way and remastered is still basing things off of what was there in the original game. There are plenty of other videos that go into more detail on why this version is terrible, but otherwise, please just take my word for it. Play this game with its original graphics on Halo Master Chief Collection. Or even go the extra mile and play the game on original Xbox, which I still think is the better way to play, and the version I'll be reviewing when it comes to single player. The version on Master Chief Collection is apparently based on a broken PC port from Gearbox, and because of that, many of the graphics and even gameplay elements are still bugged from that version of the game. 343 has done a ton of work to fix this version of the game, to the point where I believe I can say this version is okay to play now. But of course, if there are any diehard Halo fans watching this video, you can correct me in the comments below. Either way, there's still enough subtle differences that I think if you're playing single player, doing it on the original Xbox version is the best way to go. You won't miss too much playing it on Master Chief Collection, but if you're a sucker for that kind of authenticity like I am, go for the Xbox version. Alright, let's try installing Combat Evolved on the Xbox Series X and... you can't play it on Series X. Okay then. I guess we're opening up the 360 for this then. Alright. Oh, and of course, spoiler warning for Combat Evolved story, obviously. Skip to this point if you don't want to be spoiled. In the 26th century, the human race has mass colonized across the galaxy. Interstellar space travel is the norm, and with colonization comes military intervention, bitches! In this future, the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC, has developed a program in addition to its usual military antics called the Spartan Program, a group of genetically enhanced super soldiers. This was in response to an alien race known as the Covenant, who several years prior to the events of the game, declared war against humanity, believing them to be an affront to their gods. In the years since, the Covenant's religious crusade has pushed humanity to the brim. Loss after loss after loss against the seemingly unstoppable genocide the Covenant are enacting. One of the most devastating is the Fall of Reach, of which Combat Evolved takes place immediately after. The starship Pillar of Autumn manages to barely escape the fall of the planet led by one Captain Keyes. As it exits slip space, the Covenant continue their attack as the ship approaches a ring-like planet. On board the ship is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, one of the aforementioned Spartans, who is tasked by Keyes to safeguard Cortana, an artificial intelligence that not only holds loads of military plans and secrets the Covenant can use, but also the location of Earth. With the ship lost, Master Chief abandons the Pillar of Autumn as he and the rest of the military and Covenant make their way to the ring's atmosphere. On the surface, Chief and Cortana make their way across the ring, rescuing and helping other survivors and collecting a team to rescue Keyes from the Covenant ship Truth and Reconciliation. Upon rescue, Keyes informs them that he learned from the Covenant that the ring world is called Halo, and they believe it to be some kind of weapon. There's some unanswered questions, but the immediate mission becomes obvious. Stop the Covenant from taking control of Halo. Chief and Cortana lead an offensive to capture Halo's control center, and upon capturing it, Cortana enters the computers of the ring world and discovers something not very good. Without hesitation, she orders Chief to find and stop Keyes, and we're dropped into a very different change of pace for the game. Up to this point, Halo have been fairly straightforward with this approach, but now you're here and the Covenant are, running away from something. Then there's also these things that are kind of moving in the forest. I didn't kill these Covenant.
Stay back! Stay back! You're not turning me into one of those things! Don't touch me!
Well, that was kind of weird, but... Fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? Oh my god, what the fuck are those things? Oh god, they're getting on me, they're in my eyes! Oh god, they're in my eyes! No, stop, 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 I don't want to play Happy Slaps, get out of my goddamn face! Whew. Okay. Maybe I can breathe a little bit. Oh my god, they have guns! The fucking zombies are using guns! Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I want to go back to the Happy Bitch Slaps! Okay, maybe I can breathe a little bit now. Oh my fucking god, there's an army of them! Why did this little shit teleport me here? Get me the fuck out of this hellhole right now! God, these hallways all blend in. I feel like I'm going to the same hallways in this place. Oh fucking shit, the zombies have rocket launchers now! This is the Flood, a parasite on the ring world. It was let loose, and that's not a good thing. That's a really not good thing. Because of this, the Ring's AI monitor 343 Guilty Spark recruits Chief to help him work towards activating Halo to rid the parasite, which Chief just kinda nonchalantly accepts. He kinda does that a lot in this game. Upon retrieving the index needed to activate Halo, Chief and Guilty Spark return to the control room but are stopped by Cortana. She reveals the real purpose of Halo and what its installation is. Now, real quick, I do want to bring up, I know things get a lot more involved with the story and lore later on when it comes to things like the Forerunners, an ancient species that built the ring in the first place. But in context to this game, they don't really explain that. As such, I don't really find it necessary to explain this stuff just yet, as if you're just an average player, you're not going to come across this stuff until the next couple games. Combat Evolved lays down the groundwork for a lot of intricate lore, but at this stage, it's just that, groundwork. And even without it, I think it's easy to follow the story just fine. Especially when you find out from Cortana that the purpose of Halo is to destroy all organic life across the galaxy to starve the Flood. Damn, I thought a few bullets to the head would do the trick fine enough, but nope. Galactic genocide. 343 Guilty Spark almost duped you into a genocide of galactic proportions. There seems to be a lot of that in Halo, isn't there? So now the mission is less stopping the Covenant and more stopping the ring from being activated altogether. In order to do this, Cortana surmises a plan to blow up the Pillar of Autumn to destroy the ring, but they need Keyes in order to do it. Unfortunately for them, Keyes is now part of this Flood blob thingy and is effectively dead. After taking his neural implant, Chief and Cortana attempt to activate the self-destruct on the Pillar of Autumn, but are stopped by Guilty Spark and have to take the ship out manually. The two manage to get out in just the nick of time as the ship explodes, destroying Halo. Being the only survivors, Chief and Cortana drift through space, with Chief acknowledging their fight has only just begun, and we get a post-credits scene of Guilty Spark drifting through space. That's Halo Combat Evolved. A lot simpler to summarize than I anticipated, honestly, but when you get down to it, Halo's story is not really that complicated. Like I said earlier, it's largely just groundwork. It's a really simple and easy to follow story otherwise. It's got decent characters, it has some cool moments, but it's not doing anything too out of the ordinary. And given how involved the story gets from here, I think this is for the best. Because so much here is just foundational, I think story-wise, it's a perfect way to enter into this universe. There is enough here to be intriguing, like imagine you're someone in 2001. You don't know what happened on Reach, why the Covenant started this war, you don't know what the Forerunners are. And yeah, I guess I could knock it against the game for not explaining stuff like this, but the central story is so easy to follow and enjoyable even without these elements that I don't think it's a necessity like it would have been in other games. Combat Evolved's story trusts that you'll just roll with it like Chief and Cortana do, because ultimately, these elements are intriguing, but what's the more pressing matter? Finding out what the Forerunners are, or stopping this little shit from annihilating at least half the galaxy? Chances are you want to give this fucking orb a beating for making you pad through the library. Forget what the Forerunners are, let me pull the trigger on this fucker, damn it.
Please stop being human.
In a weird way, I think that leaves a lot of intrigue by the end of the game because once those pressing matters are dealt with, you'll have more questions. What are the Forerunners? What is the Flood? What are the Covenant and why are they fighting humanity to begin with? In any other game, I'd probably be peeved not knowing this, but since Halo's core story is already enjoyable, these feel less like questions I need answered, and more like questions I want to see answered. The Flood twist is such a great one too. Yeah, it does come a little bit out of nowhere, but Bungie makes sure the moment sticks with that incredible build-up beforehand. The characters definitely help here too. Not the strongest, but they make their impressions. Chief is a man of few words, so whenever he does speak, it makes the moment all the cooler. Cortana has sass like you wouldn't believe, and Keyes is a no-nonsense, get-the-job-done captain. Shout out to my girl Echo 419. We never saw you, but you were a real one. This game's story and characters are packed with charm, and I think it strongly benefits Combat Evolved. I wish I could say the same about the gameplay. Look, I do have to give the game credit for what it accomplished at the time it came out. From a gameplay standpoint, this game was incredibly revolutionary as far as console shooters go. This is the first time you saw a game like this use twin stick movement, controller movements altogether, aim assists, you name it. There's a lot here that's essentially a blueprint for what every console shooter after would follow. And on the subject of control, well, on Master Chief Collection you can customize it however you want. So there's no real issue here. The original game did take some time getting used to, what with stuff like the crouch being mapped to the left stick or a melee attack being mapped to the B button, but it's nothing getting over a little muscle memory won't accomplish. It's ambitious for its time, just like the rest of the game, and I can respect Combat Evolved a hell of a lot in that sense. But it feels like for every single thing this game gets tremendously right, there's also something that gets tremendously wrong. Never in my life have I felt so conflicted by a video game and whether or not I can recommend it to people. The question now is, why? Let's begin with what it does right. The gameplay of Combat Evolved is a ton of fun. Just like the story, a lot of it feels foundational to what would come, but what is here is still great on its own merits. You play as Master Chief, and as you go through the game, you'll come across a variety of locations on the Halo ring that range from forest, to snowy canyons, to islands, all as you stop the Covenant and eventually the Flood and 343 Guilty Spark and his Sentinels. Gunplay is fairly limited, but still satisfying. Chief will have access to a machine gun, a shotgun, a rocket launcher, a sniper rifle, and the universe's strongest pistol. All of these weapons are self-explanatory and each fulfill a specific niche. Snipers cover long distance, shotgun covers close quarters, machine gun covers crowd control, rocket launchers cover brute force, and the pistol covers everything else. I can't emphasize enough how stupid strong the pistol in this game is. Like, what is this thing on? In addition though, you can also use a few Covenant weapons. This is smaller, but it includes the plasma pistol, which you can do either single shots or charged shots, and the plasma rifle, which is pretty self-explanatory. However, these weapons don't use ammo. Instead, they have a battery that will eventually run out, and they can overheat if you use them too much. The only Covenant weapon that uses ammo is the Needler, and god, this thing is so satisfying to use. Basically, it shoots all these glowing homing needles, right? But it doesn't immediately hurt anyone. Instead, you have to shoot several at them in an enemy that build up and then explode when there's enough contact on them. It's a high-risk, high-reward weapon, and while it doesn't seem particularly strong in this game, it's just a really fucking cool weapon to use and look at. This thing has always been one of my favorite guns in the series. You'll need them too in order to effectively fight enemies. Chief has a health bar that you'll need health pickups to restore, but in addition he also has shields that recharge. Some Covenant factions have shields themselves, and these Covenant weapons are usually the best way of shredding their shields. When you look at Halo at first glance, all of this can seem pretty simple, and for the most part on easier difficulties, it is. But what makes the gameplay so engaging is just how detailed it is across the board. This has gotta be some of the most impressive AI I've ever seen in a video game, let alone one from 2001. First, when it comes to allies, they all perform very well. They are very rarely, if ever, intrusive. They'll constantly be making their own decisions that will find some way to help or benefit you, and they always lend a helpful hand if you're in a vehicle with them. Halo has vehicle combat as well. You can drive a Warthog truck, which can hold one passenger and a turret gunner behind it, and in one mission you can drive a tank and have allies ride on it with you. Covenant have this Ghost, which is a really fast-paced vehicle, and have aerial vehicles called Banshees. The vehicle combat here is just as integral as the gunplay, and there will be a handful of times where you'll have to navigate Halo with one of these, and they're, gonna be honest, kinda clunky at times, but I'll get to that. Anyways, to get back to AI, the real star of the show here is the Covenant. While the Flood usually acts like what you would expect from a parasitic enemy, and the Sentinels really aren't in the game long enough to gauge what they're like to fight besides being really bouncy, the Covenant are insanely adaptable. There's 4 kinds in this game. You have Grunts, which are just silly little guys that act as fodder and say some really funny shit. Jackals are a little smarter, being more maneuverable and having shields in one hand. Elites are essentially your equals. They will always be on the move, they will always bob and weave in and out of cover, and they have their own shields. Finally, there's Hunters, a mini-boss enemy of sorts that can either focus on brute strength or have a brutal ranged force with their arm cannons. And it's how the Covenant interact with you and the world around you that makes Halo so engaging to play most of the time. I mentioned that the elites will bob and weave, but the Covenant as a whole will have different personalities when it comes to combat, and you'll always have to be just as adaptable as they are. Covenant will jump to safety if you drive a vehicle towards them, they'll strategically throw grenades or use camouflage to throw you off. All of this sounds very simple, and there are some points where the game just kind of forgets this and the AI is stupid, although funny to watch. But this keeps the gameplay of Halo dynamic. No encounter with the Covenant, or any enemy faction for that matter, is going to play out the same way. There could be times where you manage to kill almost every single Covenant in an area and then die, but the next time you spawn in, not only are there Covenant moving in different unscripted directions altogether, but you might kill all of the elites first this time and cause the grunts to panic running away and not fight back. That dynamic gameplay loop is what makes Halo so special compared to many of its contemporaries. You aren't going through scripted sequences where encounters play out the same way. Rather, each level is like a playground where anything can happen. No matter how many times you come back, things are always going to happen in a way you don't anticipate, whether it's small or big. And that's what makes these games so much fun to play. Its versatility is its greatest strength. It's too bad the versatility doesn't translate to the levels themselves. Okay, so Halo has 10 levels here. Outside of the first level, Halo's design is largely having these smaller corridor areas to funnel you between these wide, sprawling levels where you have some more wiggle room to play around and experiment. And the game starts with so much promise too. The second level, arriving on Halo, is an absolutely breathtaking level that really gets you situated for what to expect moving forward. And then Truth and Reconciliation is where you might slowly start to notice the first problem with the levels. These open, sprawling levels are great, but when it comes to the smaller, traditional corridor areas of the game, they start to blend in. They can blend in a lot. You might notice it's a little easy to get lost on the Truth and Reconciliation because, hey, didn't I just go through that door? Haven't I seen this hallway before? And here is where you can most clearly see the behind the scenes issues. Halo has a lot of gorgeous open worlds in it, and I will say for a game that came out in 2001, it still looks incredible. But some of these environments will get repetitive to look at very, very quickly. The library is probably the most infamous example. You've likely heard a lot of people talk shit about this level, and yeah, it kind of deserves it. Because it would already be bad enough dragging your feet through a level where it feels like nothing is happening to this degree and you're getting swarmed by Flood this often. But you go through the same hallways, the same elevators, and the same open spaces outside the halls over and over and over again. It's emblematic of one of the game's biggest issues. Does an area look like one you've already been through? Well, there's a very good chance it does, and that's because the assets were very clearly reused. It can be downright exhausting to travel through some of these levels because you're going through the reused areas over and over again. Again, I'd point fingers on the library, but I'm going to point to something I think is worse, because as bad and repetitive as the library is, at least it expects the same thing from me and still gives me the means to actually do it. Assault on the control room. Oh my fucking god, what a dog shit level. It starts off a little interesting, especially when you're greeted with seeing this snowy canyon for the first time, but god damn, does it become frustrating. It isn't that bad at first, I honestly say it's a bit of a comfortable pace, but after you have to abandon the tank, oh boy, it goes downhill really quickly. Not considering the interiors repeat over and over and over and over, but the open spaces here are way too fucking open. It's so easy to get hit by something stray in the middle of these open areas. There's almost no cover in them, so good luck trying to navigate them without getting shot. They throw so much shit at you in this mission, which wouldn't be a problem, but you know what is? Look at my health bar. This is how it's going to look for most of the level. It isn't like this across any other levels in the game. Halo isn't a ball-bustingly hard time, but it will kick your ass if you get reckless, which is how I played it for the first time in 2021. If you take your time here, think about your movement, position, keep track of your health and shields, you'll find more success like I did this second time I played it. And this mission, that doesn't fucking matter because you can't find health packs anywhere. Play it aggressive, play it slow. It won't matter when you go through most of the mission knowing anything could one-shot you at a moment's notice. And I very quickly remembered why this level was so fucking frustrating the first time I played it. God fucking damn, I just want to keep going. No! Fuck! Son of a bitch! You know the real kicker here? I got frustrated enough that I stepped away from the game and then came back to it, only to find out my game never saved when I was at the tail end of the level and had to go through the entire fucking mission all over again. It doesn't help either that the game lags like crazy on the original Xbox. Like, what the hell am I looking at right now? God, I just want this piece of shit mission to end. God fucking damn it! Holy shit! Who thought this fucking mission was good? I'd really like to know. This is, honest to God, one of the worst levels I've ever played in the video game. It's one of the central reasons I don't like going back to this game. It's every problem Combat Evolved has wrapped in one absolutely garbage level. And the best part? 3 levels later, in 2 betrayals, you have to go through the entire level backwards. Oh boy! And this time, almost half of it is on foot. God damn it, no. I just fucking finished this level. It doesn't help either that checkpoints can be really problematic sometimes too. There's no real indication of when they're gonna go off. I think it's connected to how many enemies you defeat in any given area, but I could never tell with how inconsistent it is. I had times when I played through the Maw with no checkpoints activated while I was destroying the core, only for the next time I spawned for one to save after I destroyed my first one. Like, why do I have to play a guessing game as to where the checkpoints in this will save? Either have them save at specific intervals and or consistently after fights. None of this. On that note too, the end of the Maw also kind of sucks. I know the Warthog chase is supposed to be this big and cool moment here, but the vehicle physics get in the way so much. You can still get to the end in a reasonable time frame, but that whole time it feels like you're fighting the controls because of how unpredictable the physics on the vehicles can be. This section right here, I think, is the main reason why I don't like using vehicles in this game. I mean, at least the music is good. And I guess to go back to a positive, the soundtrack here is absolutely incredible stuff. And I don't just mean the iconic main theme. Martin O'Donnell composed the soundtrack, and what you have is honestly one of the best video game soundtracks ever made, and probably my favorite soundtrack in the series. The bombastic sound of Brothers in Arms, the intensity of Perilous Journey, the gorgeous synths of Walk in the Woods and Under Cover of Night, the fucking strings of Devil Monsters, mysterious nature of Perchance to Dream. The soundtrack is this perfect blend of science fiction and mystical fantasy. There's no other way I can describe it. Yes, the main theme is iconic for good reason, but give this soundtrack a listen front to back. It deserves it. Alright, well, that wraps up single player, so why don't we get to multiplayer? I was a little excited to talk about this one since I never really played the original multiplayer on CE and, well, still technically haven't. Let me explain. First off, I do feel the need to address co-op. Not only can you play this game split-screen multiplayer, but you can also play the entire campaign in split-screen co-op as well. I wasn't able to do that in time for this video, both because I just didn't have the proper time to cover it, and I don't have any friends. But the co-op of classic Halo is still something that is just as important as the rest of the game. Having co-op available and this accessible is fantastic and becomes a huge staple of Halo for good reason. You don't have to only experience this content for yourself, you can also play with your friends on the couch and experience it together. Okay, that's just how co-op works now that I say it out loud. But there's something particularly special about how Halo does co-op. That dynamic gameplay is still present when you play co-op, so not only are things changing moment to moment in the game, they're also always changing moment to moment with your friends. I don't really know how else to properly explain it. Halo co-op just hits differently. Because of the kind of game it is, it creates this special experience that only Halo co-op can properly achieve. This extends to multiplayer as well. And here's where things get a little complicated when it comes to the multiplayer on older Halo games. This doesn't affect Combat Evolved as much as later titles, but you can't play the original multiplayer unless you go through some hoops. In Combat Evolved's case, this means you either have to get some buddies to play the game together, or go the extra mile and set up a LAN party with multiple Xboxes and TVs. Something I obviously don't have easy access to in 2024 because A, again, I don't have friends, B, I don't exactly know anyone who has multiple Xboxes and TVs to set up something in person like this, and C, if people are playing classic Halo multiplayer in any fashion, they're likely playing Master Chief Collection on either current Xbox or on PC. Master Chief Collection is an entire beast in and of itself. The game infamously launched in a totally broken state in 2014, but over the years, 343 Industries has stuck to fixing it, and for the most part, this is the definitive way to play this game if you're looking for a modern way to play without many issues. Not without its faults, again, the single player is based on a broken PC port, but with the wide availability of Game Pass, this is the most accessible way to play all of the older Halo games. It's got its own touch-ups as well. There are weapon and vehicle skins, there's a ton of free cosmetic stuff in general you can earn, in addition to 8 free battle passes to unlock more. The game has a ton of accessibility features and control options, you can see a bunch of detailed stats. It has its own progression across all the multiplayer that mostly only earns you points to spend on the passes and other cosmetic items. All free, I will add again. Tons of custom game modes you can browse for in regular matchmaking, and there's even custom games browsing and separate competitive progression for certain games. Now, in Combat Evolved's case, this is about as far as it goes. Other games got extra maps and additional content the original releases didn't have, but it seems like Combat Evolved was mostly untouched aside from quality of life improvements here and there and the cosmetic stuff. And maybe it was just me or I wasn't playing on peak hours, but even on Master Chief Collection, it doesn't really seem like a lot of people are playing this. I tried so hard for so long to get into anything in this game that wasn't 4v4. I wanted to show off bigger maps like Blood Gulch, for example, but it seems like the population of this game is a lot lower than I expected. Maybe that has to do with all these other games being on the collection, maybe it's just bad luck on my end. But still, I would encourage you have some friends to play with this if you're able. There's not really a ton of variety when it comes to the game modes. There's Slayer, which is a traditional deathmatch, Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, Racing, and Oddball, a game mode where you hold the ball to earn points. Each of these game modes have several variants and sub-variants, such as the King of the Hill where the hill rotates, or Auto Slayer, which lets you spawn in with only assault rifles. Some custom modes are in matchmaking though. There were a couple matches I played where they were nothing but fuel rod cannons, which were a really fun distraction, or another one where everyone uses flamethrowers. Yeah, multiplayer's got some weapons the campaign didn't have. So there's a little more variety when it comes to the sandbox of the game. Playing the multiplayer for Combat Evolved was quite the experience, one that I personally like to call, everyone has a Magnum Dawn. Okay, let's talk about multiplayer without this thing for a second. Like the single player, Combat Evolved's multiplayer basically puts you in a playground of sorts. Each team will start with the same loadout, but across each map, you can find items that will aid you in winning matches. And knowing where these items are positioned, especially in relation to power positions on maps, is key to success. For example, Battle Creek is an arena map with 2 bases, and on each side you can find either a plasma rifle or a needler. However, there's also ladders you can climb, and at the very top you can find a sniper rifle along with an easy position to snipe the other team from their side of the map. Maps can vary in design from something like Battle Creek, which has a more predictable design and flow, or something like Damnation, a map with a ton of verticality. Learning and having knowledge of where everything is on a map is something that becomes a core part of Halo's design. Everyone starts out on the same playing field, so it never feels like you're at an inherent disadvantage. If someone manages to get a sniper rifle before you, then they earned it. If someone managed to get a grenade stash before you, they earned it. There are 2 power-ups you can get in the form of active camouflage, which turns you invisible, or overshield, which gives you 3 layers of shields. If you found these before the other players, you earned it. This makes for a multiplayer experience that, while admittedly bare bones, offers a ton of variety for how you can approach matches. You can play things stupid and use the needler, which honestly is not very effective at all in multiplayer, or if you're feeling competitive, you can find a sniper rifle and go nuts with it. Both types of playstyles are encouraged and rewarded. You can either play the game hardcore competitive online or with friends, or you can just fuck around. This is something about Halo's design I've always absolutely loved. It gives you all these tools in the sandbox to use, but how you use them is entirely up to you. If only anything was just as effective as the Magnum. Oh boy. So considering all of this, Combat Evolved's multiplayer can be a ton of fun. It's archaic and bare bones, but it's fun. And impressive given that Bungie only made it in like 4 months. This design philosophy would work great if it wasn't for that goddamn Magnum. I'm conflicted on this. Halo's got a great variety of weapons and tools to use in matches, but that doesn't matter when you can be 3-tapped with this thing. The Magnum is stupid overpowered in this game. It isn't just effective as a pistol. It's a sniper, it's a shotgun, it's a DMR. 90% of the matches you play here, everyone is using it because it's the most effective weapon in the game. And on some maps, the only weapon worth really using. On one hand, this can be pretty amusing at times. Like, it's so dumb that this thing got past any kind of testing and is as busted as it is. On the other, if this sounds like something that bothers you, you're not really gonna like Combat Evolved's multiplayer. It gets so much right on paper that gets immediately shredded the second this thing comes into play. And again, I personally don't mind this too much. If you recall what I said about Call of Duty 4's multiplayer, that game's unbalance was part of the charm for me, and it is the same deal here. It's stupid easy to use a Magnum, but that makes it even more rewarding if you start popping off with any other weapon in the game. But that simultaneously makes it all the more frustrating when you get spawn killed in 3 shots by someone with a Magnum. Maybe this is because I was playing 4v4 or something, but the spawns are not always the most graceful in this game. Too many times I will either spawn right in front of somebody or even right next to where I died. It can be a bit chaotic. Sometimes I enjoy that chaos, other times it can be the bane of my fucking existence. The other issue isn't really a fault of Combat Evolved. I like so much of what CE does here when it comes to multiplayer, but not even considering how broken the pistol is, this is a design philosophy that Bungie would vastly improve on and perfect in later games. And because of that, I don't personally find a ton of merit going back to this game's multiplayer, when Halo 2 and 3 did very similar things, but exponentially better. There are still things I enjoy about Combat Evolved's multiplayer a lot, and I like some of the things that are unique to it, like its occasionally wacky map design, but especially when some of these maps have been remastered so many times in later games, I can't find myself recommending this game too often when future games build upon this game's foundation and make it even better. It is not bad by any means, even with the faults it has. I just don't think it's a must play unless you already have attachment to it, or you get really, really tired of Halo 2, 3, or even Reach. Still recommend it over 4 though, I'll give it that much. I'm so torn. I love what Halo Combat Evolved does on a fundamental level. It lays the groundwork for a great story and narrative with great characters with a level of dynamic gameplay that even most games today wish they could accomplish, both in single player and in multiplayer. In that sense, I really like Combat Evolved and would recommend it. It's just that those problems are extremely glaring problems that start to drag it down in the second half of the campaign. The level design is either overly repetitive or too open, and because of that, it can either get really tedious to play, or the dynamic gameplay can work against you in ways that will make you want to quit the game altogether. Multiplayer is the same deal. There's so much that works here fundamentally, but that doesn't matter much when you're getting spawn killed by the same players using the Magnum game after game. It's so frustrating to me because I want to love this game. I really want to love this game, but there's just too many cracks for me. It does so much right to earn its status among the best games ever made, but the cracks it shows aren't just cracks to me, they're gaping holes from an earthquake that can potentially sour the entire experience. I mean, maybe you'll find something to like that I didn't really like, or maybe vice versa. In a weird way, I would still recommend checking out this game to a certain degree. Like when I reviewed the first Call of Duty game, Halo Combat Evolved is a game that I can only personally appreciate in context for when it came out. That being said though, unlike Call of Duty, I still think it's a game that's worth going back to. If not for the accessibility of it nowadays thanks to Game Pass, then for the things the game does get extremely right. Play it yourself, maybe proceed with some caution knowing it's dated in a lot of areas, and see what you think of it then. You're not going to change my mind at all, so don't even try, but maybe you'll see something I didn't. And frankly, I do have a lot of respect for the people who do review this game regardless, because I mean, it is a big task talking about a game that is this big and this popular. I got 2 more in that trilogy that I just like that to review still.